Hi students, welcome to part 2 of our graphing straight lines lessons. This time we're learning how to sketch and graph straight lines using intercepts. So learning goals: by the end of this video you should be able to sketch a straight line using the intercepts method. Right, key things to recall. So the x-intercept of a graph can be found by substituting in y equals 0 and rearranging for x. Conversely, the y-intercept of a graph can be found by substituting in x equals 0 and rearranging for y. So remember, that's not a very straight line. So remember our Cartesian plane, x-axis, y-axis. Along our x-axis, the y value is 0. And then we go up to 1 and down to -1 from there. And similarly for our y-axis, for our y-intercept, that's got an x value of 0, where we go +1 up to the right and -1 to the left. So that's why we substitute in y equals 0 for our x-intercept, because on our x-axis the y value is 0, and for our y-intercept we substitute in x equals 0 because that's the x value on our y-axis. So using intercepts to sketch straight lines actually works best for lines written in standard form. So anything that looks like this, where a, b, and d are numbers. Okay, so we can't see what the gradient or the y-intercept is very easily because y is not on its own. Right? It's better to use intercepts. The maths comes out a lot easier, and we'll see that in an example. So when sketching a graph using x and y intercepts, the steps to follow are basically find your intercepts, plot them on your graph, and then draw your line in between them. Pretty straightforward. Find your intercepts by subbing in y equals 0 for your x-intercept. Find your y-intercept by subbing in x equals 0. Plot them on your Cartesian plane on your graph. Draw your line between them. And reminder, this method works best for standard form. Alright, so here we've got our line written in standard form, 4x minus 2y equals 6. And we're going to sketch it. Because it's written in standard form, using intercepts will be easiest. We could rearrange it so it's written in gradient intercept form and sketch it that way, like you would have seen in the previous video. But if it's written in standard form, let's just use standard form and find the intercepts instead. It's pretty straightforward. So first of all, let's find our x-intercept. And we'll do that by substituting in y equals 0. So 4x will still be there. Subtract, sub in y equals 0, that will just be 0. And this is why using intercept form is pretty good, because when we substitute in y equals 0 into standard form, that whole term disappears. Similarly, when we find our y-intercept, we'll substitute in x equals 0 in for x, and then that whole term disappears, making it really easy to rearrange. So we've gotten to this point, 4x equals 6, then rearranging x equals 6 over 4, which is 3 on 2 or 1.5. So going to our graph, 1.5 will be roughly there. And then we need to find our y-intercept, which will be when x equals 0. So substituting that in, 4 times 0 will give us 0, minus 2y equals 6, so -2y equals 6. Rearranging that, y equals 6 over -2, which equals -3. So our y-intercept is -3. And then between our points there, between our x-intercept of 1.5 and our y-intercept of -3, we can draw our line, and there is our graph, or our sketch of the line 4x minus 2y equals 6. Alright, so the other thing to consider is sometimes some lines might only have one intercept. So for example, the line x equals a is a vertical line with just an x-intercept at the value a. Now the second one, y equals b, is a horizontal line. It only has a y-intercept. at whatever value it's equal to. So we'll do some quick examples. All right, so let's do some examples of these ones. First of all, we've got this line x equals -6. So this line has an x-intercept of -6, which is over here. If it's got an x-intercept there, we're looking at a vertical line. So no matter what the y value is, the x value is always -6. There's our vertical line there. X equals -6. So our x value along that line is not changing. It's always -6. Similarly, for y equals 9, it's got a y-intercept at 9, and that's it. There's no x-intercept. So we can just draw a horizontal line there at y equals 9. And there's our second line in that example. All right, so just to review our learning goals, you should now be able to sketch a straight line using the intercepts method. Once again, these are for lines best written in standard form or lines that only have one intercept.